All right, thank you. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Bogdan, and thank you so much for having me. There's a couple seats here at the front for those of you that are hanging out in the back. I'm so happy to be here. I'm actually joined by my wife, Megan, who's trying not to worry too hard about our two youngest children that we left by themselves in the United States. But super pleased to be here. I consider myself a developer at heart, and so I feel like I'm with my people. Now, some of you may look at me and you're like, no, he's not one of us. He's just an old guy. And in fact, I know I'm old because day before yesterday in Paris on Wednesday, I got onto a subway and this very nice white-haired gentleman gave up his seat for me so that I could so I could sit down. So I guess I've officially entered into that phase. But if I'm honest with myself, the amount of time I actually spend programming these days is quite small compared to the amount of time I spend doing other things. And if you hear me say that, that might represent the worst fear for some of you, that if you start to take on more leadership responsibilities, that you'll lose the ability or the time to do the thing that you love. And if you're like me, the thing that you love is programming. I love the whole experience of writing a piece of code, of starting with an idea and working out how I'm going to solve it. And I like thinking about seeing things take shape until I finally create something useful or cool even. I like thinking about the code and when I'm driving or taking a shower and the parts I like and the parts I still want to change and fix, and then having this sudden idea, and I can't wait to run back to the keyboard to try it out. So maybe you can relate to some of that. That's very, I find that very addictive, and I got hooked early on as a child with programming. Something else that I got hooked on as a child, oops, I'm not supposed to show you that yet. Something else I got hooked on as a child was music. So I started playing the piano when I was 6 years old, I think so. And then I wanted to join the school band. And my mom said, no drums, got to pick an instrument. So I chose the saxophone, and then I switched to bassoon a little bit later. If you know what a bassoon is, raise your hand. I'll be super impressed. Oh, one person knows what a bassoon is. But anyway, I'll help you out here. That's this thing up here. There we go. That's a bassoon. By the time I finished high school, I picked up a couple of other instruments. This is actually a page from a portfolio, a scholarship application I put together my last year in high school. So this is how I used to look. I was young once. And this was just to show how cool I was with how many instruments I could play. So here we are 30, 40 years later. I won't tell you exactly how many. Which would you guess, which of these instruments would you guess brings me the most joy and fulfillment today? The drums. It's a trick question because the answer is none of the above. What actually, the musical thing that actually brings me the most joy and fulfillment these days is leading my church choir. This is a picture of us last Sunday before I hopped on a plane to come to Europe. And it's an all-volunteer choir. We're lucky if we get 15 people on a really good day, maybe 20 people if it's a song people like. I never know who's going to show up, who's not going to show up. But even given all that, there's something very satisfying to me, very fulfilling about being able to make music together and being able to help create, involve others in this process of creation and making something beautiful. And I just really love that, and that really fills me up. And so that brings us back to the question of, do you have to give up creating when you start to take on leadership responsibilities? And the answer is no. One of my colleagues, I don't think he's here today, Kosti Georgiou, talks about this, and I love the way he put it. He said, when you think about becoming a leader, one of your first reactions might be to think you won't be able to be as hands-on, no longer going to get to build things yourself. However, he says, transitioning to leadership doesn't have to mean that you need to lose your technical or your creative side. And he says, for him, the satisfaction's even bigger with a team because together you can build more and build faster than you ever could alone. That's been my experience as well. That together you can do more than you can do by yourself. So if you're thinking about becoming a leader, or maybe you're already well along that road, what do you do? Is it a totally different set of skills, or how do you get going? And I believe that if you've made the effort to become an excellent programmer, that you actually already have a number of the skills you need to be a successful leader. And I'm going to explore this idea with you by showing you a couple of quick excerpts of me programming. I know you're all excited about that. I don't usually record myself programming, but I made a little video a couple of years ago to do some training on test-driven development and stopping points. So we're going to watch a couple of these short programming clips, and instead of judging my programming abilities, you're going to think about, or judging the quality of my code, you're going to think about what leadership lessons do we see from this specific example. So let's do this first one. Hopefully the audio is working correctly. We will soon find out. So watch and see if you can identify a leadership skill here in this programming example.
You may remember Roman numerals from back in elementary school math class, or maybe you wondered about those strings of M's and C's and D's and L's and X's that accompany a movie copyright date. So our feature is take a Roman numeral string and return the integer equivalent of that string. All right. That's really not the only single character Roman numeral string. I know I need to make V work, I need to make X work, I need to make, what's next, what's 50? L, C is 100, D is 500, and M is 1,000. So I gotta get all those tests to pass. Well, they all pass right now because my assertion is wrong, but B should be 5, X should be 10, L should be 50, C should be 100. How do I know all this? Because I brushed up on my Roman numerals before I started. And M should be 1,000.
All right. So what did you see there in terms of a leadership skill? All right, I think you said something about having to understand the requirements or explaining the requirements. Okay. So yeah, if as you all know, as experienced programmers, before you sit down to write a piece of code, you need to have some idea what you want that code to do. And what you hopefully saw there was me first explaining the general problem I was trying to solve, Roman numerals, which are everywhere in Europe, by the way. This was a picture from the Place de la Concorde, and then I saw a bunch of Roman numerals all around Timisoara today. I was taking pictures everywhere. But I first describing that general problem, and then I got very specific about what I wanted the program to do next in terms of being able to handle those single character Roman numerals, Roman numeral digits. So both of those are examples of describing a future state that doesn't yet exist, right? This code doesn't exist yet, but I was able to describe something I wanted to see in the future. So we're going to call that skill being able to paint a vision of the future. So this woman is so happy because she just had this idea for something she's wants to build, and she's going to describe it to her team because it's bigger than she can build by herself, right? So this is a super important skill. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do this with a team. Maybe it's just drawing a picture on a whiteboard, using Figma, like Joanna was showing us. But you want to create a picture in someone's head. Now, it doesn't have to be correct. It doesn't have to be a perfect idea or a perfect representation of the future in order to be useful. In fact, Jeff Patton, I've used this picture a lot from Jeff Patton, who describes a couple different ways of envisioning the future. And this top way here never happens to me. Maybe it happens like once or twice in your lifetime where you just wake up and you see exactly the code that you need to write or the picture you need to paint, and it's just perfect in your head, and you just run to the computer and type it all out. I guess that's how Mozart composed music, they said. I don't know if that's actually true, but more often than not, the experience is more like this bottom line here, where you have a vague idea of what you want. I want a woman in a pastoral setting, but the details have to be worked out as you create. And both of these are perfectly fine in terms of a vision. Both of these are equally well. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to learn as you go. But the key skill is being able to describe that vision and paint that vision for your team. So like I said, it's a whiteboard sketch or something else. One of my favorite practices, those of you that are here that work with me at Brivo know that one of my favorite things to do is to make a team sit together for 5 or 10 minutes, and I say, all right, imagine that this feature is already done. The feature we're about to write. Imagine it's already done, and how are you going to use it? What are you going to type? What screen are you going to go to? What are you going to type in? What's going to come out? What's the input? What's the output? So just writing out a little test case. That's a great way to get people in that future mindset. Okay, let me imagine the future, and let's imagine the future together. All right, so that's your first skill. Oh, I got to see the actual Mona Lisa on Monday. That's your first skill, being able to paint a vision of the future. Let's look at another programming episode and see what we can learn from this next one.
I want to at least handle the subtraction cases. So let's figure out how to do that. I'll just throw in some more tests here that test a subtraction instead of addition. So the canonical one, IV, should give me 4. IX should give me cancel the rule. I can do the same thing with X and C. That should give me 90. I can do the same thing with C and D, which should give me 400, etc. I can go all fancy and movie copyright date and do MCM. That's 1900. Let's do 40, which is XL. Let's do 1949 IX. That should give me a date of 1949. Okay, that's enough test cases. 5 subtraction cases there. And my previous tests are still passing, but my subtraction tests are all failing. And we can see that for IV, instead of 4, I'm actually getting 6. It's still adding them together. I'm getting 11 instead of 9 for IX, and I'm getting 2,171 instead of 1949. So I need to figure out whether I'm doing an addition or a subtraction. So I still think that looping over the individual characters in the string is the right approach. But now, instead of looking at just one character at a time, I need to look at 2 characters in succession. So I'm going to introduce a variable here called previous val, set that to 0. And then this thing I'm going to call current val. And then at the end of my loop, I'm going to make previous val be set to current val. And then in here, here's where I do my test. So if the previous val is less than the current val, I want to subtract the previous value from the sum. Otherwise, I want to add the previous value to the sum. And I think I've got a condition at the end. I need to handle the end case. Yeah, this doesn't all quite work right. Am I still? So yeah, I think it looks like I'm missing the final character. Missing the final character here on a lot of these. So yes, so I need to return. I'm going to get that last previous val here in the last case. I think that should take care of it. And it does, except I've messed up 1605 instead of 1615. That could be a bad test there. Oh yeah, I actually threw in a subtraction here by accident, which I did not mean to. So MBC, that's going to be 1600, and then VX, it's treating that as a subtraction. What I really want is XV. Fix that test. So I unintentionally was testing subtraction before, didn't even realize.
All right, I'm sure you would just love to sit here and watch me program all the rest of the afternoon, but I apologize, it's a little small for those of you in the back, and I don't usually talk that fast. I sped it up so you wouldn't get too bored here. But did we pick up any leadership lessons from that little episode? There, this one's a little harder. There's some attention to detail there. What I was hoping you would pick up is that this is kind of me getting into an actual solving part of the algorithm there, and I spent anytime I sit down to write a program, I spend some time trying to make sure that my environment is such that I can do stuff quickly. So I was using, you saw a test-driven development style where I can very quickly try something out, see if it worked. If it did work, great. If it didn't work, it tells me where my mistake is. I can pretty quickly move that, move and find the mistake. So this idea, I'm going to call this creating a productive and rewarding environment. And just like I think it's important to do this when I'm programming by myself, it's very important to do this as you lead a team or a group of teams. You need to take time to see how well every individual on the team is able to be productive, how well teams can work together. When you've got a group of people trying to create some software together, communication is very, very important. So how easy is it for the team to jointly figure out what they're going to do, try something out, see if it worked or not, and then solve the problems that occur along the way? That has to do both with the environment for individual developers. Like, I can't tell you how many teams I've worked with or observed where it can take minutes to get feedback on whether or not your code does what you meant it to do. So you write something and then you got to wait for it to compile, or you got to wait for a WAR or a DLL to build, or heaven forbid you have to go back to the web app and navigate your way through the web app just to see if that code you typed does what you meant it to do. That slows individuals down, that slows the whole team down. Then there's the communication aspect. I've also seen a number of teams where there's a lot of friction involved in team members talking to each other. Maybe you're remote, and so it's a hassle to kind of contact the other person, or everyone's got their headphones on in the room, and it's not socially acceptable to bother someone with their headphones on. And all of those things can impact the productivity of your environment. The other piece that you hopefully saw there is what I call this rewarding environment. It's very important to create these small wins along the way. You saw that with my test-driven development, and one of the things I love, I don't know if you picked this up I was using PyCharm, and I had it set to automatically run the unit tests every time I did something. So there wasn't even a separate step. I could just stop typing, it would rerun the unit tests, and every time a test would pass, a new test would pass, I get that little bit of dopamine hit, right? It's like, yes, I did it, I did something good. And it's kind of silly, but I honestly feel that way when I'm working in this kind of environment. You need to create that same type of environment for their teams. People work best when they feel like the goal is achievable and they're making progress towards that goal. That's when people do their best work, not when they're stressed out, not when they're being criticized, not when they feel like it's hopeless, but when they feel like they're making progress. And there's a lot of ways to do this on a team. Back in the olden days, before Jira took over the world, we used to write our story headlines on, you can see how old in the olden days were there. We used to write our story headlines on these index cards, and whenever we would finish a user story, we'd take our big red pen and make a huge check mark on the card. Looks like some of these cards even got like special awards. I'm not sure what those were for. I was on one team that went out and bought a whole bunch of these champagne party poppers. I don't know if you've used those, where you pull the string and it makes a big explosion. And then this team would actually take the confetti flies out. They'd take the confetti, they'd tape it to the card, and that was kind of a way of celebrating success along the way. And by the way, this works great with your family too. Here's some cards we used to plan out a Christmas vacation when we had all the kids home one year. But however you do it, these small rewards are important. You don't even have to wait for to be finished with a whole user story. I remember another team I worked with, we had our continuous integration server, cruise control at the time, set up so that every time someone checked in code, it would check out the code, compile it, run all the tests, and if the test passed, we had it set to play a favorite movie clip. So everyone brought in their nominations for which movies do you like, what's the funniest movie clip you know about. And we plugged in, 24 of these things. And so then periodically throughout the day, as people are working along, we were all in one big team room there. So the CI server was sitting there with us over on the side. And every time, someone would check in code, you'd hear this funny sound, and everyone would chuckle. But it gives you that kind of mutual feeling of, all right, we're making progress, we're being successful. Of course, we had to have a sound that would play if the build did not pass, and which reminds me of one night. One of the developers was in the team room all by themselves, working late. I think they were in the building all by themselves. So it was dark outside, and in the zone. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets, "I'm initiating emergency core shutdown. Core breach is imminent. All hands abandon ship." And someone had checked in, bad code from home. This is our failed build sound that week, and this poor guy just jumped out of his seat, not expecting. So I guess you got to be careful. Careful there with your rewards. All right, one more video, one more leadership lesson.
All right, so I'm at red, green. I got the failing test, now I've got a passing test. I'm at the refactor step in my TDD cycle, and this is starting to smell to me. I've got this special case here, and I am thinking ahead to these other rules, where I can't subtract an I from a C. If I keep down this road, I just see a bunch of special cases in the code, especially as I start looking at, let's try these invalid repetitions. I think that'll get me somewhere. So I'm not allowed to do 4 I's. I'm not allowed to do 2 V's. I'm not allowed to do 4 C's. All sorts of things I can't do. I can't do 2 L's. and those are invalid additions. So I start to see the problem here. I'm going to go ahead and put that invalid subtraction back. What was that? IC. I'm going to need something more elegant, more comprehensive to catch these invalid additions, this kind of invalid subtraction. I'm going to do some shower thinking and.
All right, it's always the shower, right? That's where you get your best ideas. All right, so what's a leadership skill there? Did anyone pick up on anything? What's that? Thinking ahead a little bit. Well, I don't know if you noticed right at the beginning, I said something like this is starting to smell. And obviously the code doesn't literally make smells, but you're probably familiar as experienced programmers with that metaphor of code smells. And it's just this sense you get that you're going down the wrong path, that you're about to create a mess, that if you don't do something to address the smell, it's going to go rotten pretty fast. And as an experienced developer, you kind of know when that moment is. So in terms of leadership, I'm not expecting you to go around and literally smell your teammates to see if they did their laundry or anything like that, but I am suggesting that you need to develop an intuition for when things are starting to go south on a team. So we're not going to call this team smells. We'll call it listen and stay aware. And this is, I can't emphasize this enough. This is what the best leaders do. They kind of have this sense for how things should feel when it's going well, and then when something starts to go off the rails, they can say, aha, this isn't good. It might be a team interaction. It could be the code itself, but you've got to figure out, when are we going wrong here? And one aspect of this, I'll relate it back to what I see experienced developers do. Really good developers have a picture of the whole system in their head. And like if I change this piece of the code, it could have a negative impact over here. If I do this here, that's going to create some duplication here. So you're working with this nice model of how all the pieces interact. And you need to do that with people as well. You need to have a sense of how one action could impact an action over here on another team member. And I'll give you a negative example of this. It's one I'm not proud of. But it has stuck with me over the years because I really learned a lot from it. So I was working late one night. I guess the lesson of this talk is don't work late because that's when all bad things happen. But I was working late one night. We must have had a release coming up or something. I don't know. And I was all by myself, and I finished up whatever it is that I was supposed to be there doing. And then I started looking around at the code my teammates had been working on that day, that week. And I noticed some things that could be improved, and so I took another hour or 2 or 3 and went around and fixed up a bunch of everyone else's code, and felt pretty good about myself. I was making it more readable and more awesome, and finally, sent a quick email to the team just saying how much better I'd made their lives, and went home and got a few hours of sleep, came back in. I was the last one in the next day, and instead of this hero's welcome that I guess I was expecting, I just got icy stares from everybody. I had failed to really consider how this would be received by my team members, and which was pretty insulting to them, frankly. And even if my code was better, that I fixed it up, but it was, and it took a long time. I'll tell you, I was a less effective leader on that team for quite a while. It took a long time to sort of repair those relationships. For months afterwards, I would find these little snarky comments in the code directed at me in case I happened to be reviewing that piece of code. So it did not feel good, right? And so the antidote to this kind of behavior is empathy. And as I asked around my colleagues, I mentioned I was going to give this talk, and asked around, what would you tell a developer that is just getting into leadership? And several of them mentioned empathy, that this is super important. The ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand how the world looks to them, and to understand how they're likely to react or respond to a given situation. So if you can work on that skill and some of us have more natural empathy than others, but if you can work on this, this will solve a lot of your problems. All right, so those are three skills that you probably already have. I'm sure you already have as an excellent programmer that can help you to develop into an equally effective technical leader. I've been thinking a lot about my time at Brivo. I just passed my 6-year mark at Brivo, and I've been reflecting on sort of what we've done and the journey we've taken together. And when I first joined Brivo, it was September 2018. We had 30 developers organized into about 7 teams. And then I also found out we had open job requisitions for 8 more positions. So I get there, I'm all gung-ho. I'm like, let's hire these folks, right? And everyone's like, oh, no, that's never going to happen. We've been trying to hire all year, and we don't even have one new developer yet. So it's never going to happen. We're never going to hire 8 developers. I'm like, no, we can do this. Come on. So we did. We hired 8 developers before the end of that year, before December of that year. And I went back and looked at the list of those developers that we hired, and every one of them is still with us, which I was kind of amazed by. In fact, several of these folks are now team leads, and one of them is a VP of engineering. And we just kept going. We kept going from there. So today, September 2024, I guess a couple months ago, we're up to 170 developers with 32 teams, and 10 of those teams right here from Victory Square Partners in Timisoara. And I'll tell you, I'm not just saying this because I'm here, but these are some of my most effective teams and the teams I can count on to get stuff done. I love working with the teams from VSP. So back to the panel session, I will never not use a development partner because you just get so much value from that. Most rewarding to me, though, is of the people that joined us back in 2019. We've got a number that are still with us, and some of them are still here. We've got Lavinia and Lavinia, Kosti, Darrell, I think I saw somewhere. Laura, I know I saw earlier. Where are you, Laura? Oh, there she is. Radu, not you, not the Radu that's here, another Radu. Again, that's just that's very fulfilling. So how did we get there? It's taken a lot of people working very hard together, but these skills that we've talked about have played a large part in this journey, this 6-year journey. And I'll just give you a few quick examples to wrap up. So painting a vision of the future. I remember when I first got to Brivo and was thinking about the future. I dug up this diagram that I actually made of teams that we had and teams that I wanted. The orange teams were going to be new VSP teams. So I wanted some mobile teams, a bread team. Lavinia will remember the bread team, yeah, both of you. And did we actually hire these teams and organize it this way? No. This was, we changed a lot of stuff, different things happened, the management structure is all different, but just having this vision, being able to represent it somehow, gave everyone an idea of where we were trying to go. So, painting a vision of the future. In terms of creating a productive and rewarding environment, we've tried very hard to make sure that teams are places that people feel good on, that they feel like their teammates have their back, that the relationships are right between the teams. We spend a lot of time making sure that we have just enough, this gets harder and harder as you grow, by the way, having just enough process to keep everybody working together, but not so much that you stifle creativity. It's a very delicate balance. But one of the things I'll say that we did there, for example, is when we went to launch Brivo Access, which is our main web application today, back in 2020, we decided that we were going to build to production every day, every working day. And we figured that would be something that would help us know when we were getting off track in terms of productivity, that would keep everyone aligned and working together. Last year we did over 200 releases of Brivo Access, and we'll do more than that this year, so that's just an example. In terms of rewards, celebrating small wins along the way, another thing I did when I started is we put everyone on the exact same sprint schedule or iteration schedule. So we start our development iterations, all 32 teams. We start them all every other Wednesday. We end every other Tuesday. And guess what happens on every other Tuesday? we celebrate each other's success. We look at what everyone's done. We talk about the progress we've made. When we were smaller and pre-COVID, we would actually bring treats and balloons into the office and make a big deal out of that. But celebrating success, the small wins, creating a rewarding environment. And then in terms of listening and staying aware, I get together with the rest of my leadership team in engineering once per quarter to talk just about what are we seeing, what are we hearing, where do we have some team smells starting to creep in. And you can imagine that over the 6 years, we've had a number of things. We come out of that every quarter, without fail. We come out of that with something new we're going to try, some goal we're going to set for ourselves. So I'll give you one example that sticks out in my mind. In the 2020, 2021 timeframe, we were doing pretty well at putting out new features, but we started to see an alarming increase in the number of production incidents. Either outages or other things were affecting our customers, to the point where our customers started to talk about, how our quality was going down, and our salespeople were complaining. And so we said, okay, whatever we're doing to address this part of our work is not working. We ended up taking about half of our developers and putting them on what we called platform teams. And said, it's your responsibility. Responsibility of these teams is just to make sure that our scalability concerns, our deliverability concerns, our performance concerns are all addressed, and we didn't let those teams get assigned features to them. We rotate folks around so that everyone's not either on a platform team or an experience team. But that turned out to be something very effective. We did, other things we've done over the years are, help increase our focus on testing or on working incrementally with stopping points or on coming out of our iterations clean. All things that we've done in response to kind of trying to listen and stay aware. So, this is, Brivo Engineering is not a perfect place. I'm not going to pretend that it's the be-all, end-all. But I feel like we've built something where smart technologists want to work, where they can feel fulfilled, where they can feel successful. And just like with leading the choir, this is something that is deeply fulfilling for me. I do miss being able to code all day, but being able to work with a bunch of people, a team, to build stuff and enjoy work together I find it very, very fulfilling. And another one of our colleagues here, Lavinia, I thought she expressed very well the rewards and the challenges that can come from being a manager. She said, I should just have her read it, but I'll do my best. În opinia mea, aceasta este adevărata frumusețe a vocației de lider, oportunitatea de îmbunătățire continuă, de a deveni cea mai bună versiune a ta, prin a îndruma și ajuta pe ceilalți. Very well. Very well said, and I would encourage you to build on your awesome programming skills and to turn those into leadership skills that will enable you to expand your reach and your ability to improve the lives of the world and improve the lives of those around you. Thank you.
Awesomeness. Thank you, Jeff.